UK Labour Party leader Jeremy Corbyn has proposed a British Digital Corporation, or BDC for short, which may also include a publicly owned nonprofit version of a social media network like Facebook. Now, this proposal has a lot of different aspects to it, and I'm going to discuss those aspects, but also the potential benefits of this. But first, to understand how this would work, you have to understand how BBC operates. So, BBC right now works on a annual licensing fee of people that are living in the UK, and a BDC would work in a similar fashion with a digital licensing fee that either ISPs or tech giants would pay. And ultimately, if an ISP is paying it, it likely would lead to higher costs for consumers, but it would be nominal, and it would create a whole range of benefits, including, as I said, a potential for a public version of a Facebook. So let me first detail some more on this. Jeremy Corbyn has proposed establishing a British digital corporation that would commission online TV, offer easy access to archive material held by public sector institutions, and operate a social networking arm that could play a role in direct democracy. Quote, "The public realm doesn't have to sit back and watch as a few mega tech corporations hoover up digital rights, assets, and ultimately our money," the Labour leader said. A BDC could develop new technology for online decision-making and audience-led commissioning of programs, and even a public social media platform with real privacy and public control over the data that is making Facebook and others so rich, Corbyn told the audience. Okay, so let me first preface this by saying that this is not official Labour Party policy. Right now, this is just a proposal, but it is clearly something that the Labour Party is looking into. Now, I think there are some obvious benefits here, and some of them are mentioned in the piece. So one is direct democracy. So a public version of a Facebook would allow greater control from the citizens in pushing forward certain policy ideas through a sort of direct democracy public Facebook approach, or another arm of a social media network that would be just directly about voting on certain policy ideas. Now, another aspect of this is clearly public control over data. So right now, private corporations like Facebook are able to sell off your data, and they make tons of money off it. So here you would have public control over the data. So whether that data would be shared or how it would be shared, if it would be shared, then people, the public, would benefit off of that data being shared. But more than likely, you would have more control over what data is shared, or if data is shared at all. And it would be more private in terms of your ability to control what is and isn't accessible to people outside of your circle of friends. So for people worrying about, well, I don't want the government meddling in my social media. Well, the government has your social insurance number. They have your address. They know who your spouse is. They know who your kids are. So the government already has all this data, and it's kept very securely. It's not sold off to third parties. So this is the sort of idea that would also be used around a social media arm of or a public social media arm of the BDC. So that would also lead, I think, to presumably censorship being less of an issue. So if there is a public version of a Facebook, you would actually have to be who you say you are online. So the idea that, there would be tons of Russian bots, for example, or any other kinds of bots that are trying to influence public policy, that wouldn't be an issue. Because for you to actually be able to access that version, that public version of Facebook, you would need to be somebody living in the UK. Now, Corbyn also made some other proposals to increase transparency in media, and I think these are worth mentioning as well. They included a freedom of information reform that removed ministerial vetoes and expanded it to include cases where private companies are delivering public services, allowing local, investigative, and public interest journalism to be taxed as charities, asking tech giants to contribute to an independent fund for public interest journalism, and expanding an existing BBC scheme to foster more local journalism, which has really died a death in the UK, as it has in many other places. Digital delivery would, of course, have a big role to play in this. The issue of there being too few for-profit tech companies that control tech services has a precedent in the media industry, something that Corbyn also directly attacked. Quote, "We must also break the stranglehold of elite power and billionaire domination over large parts of our media," he said. just 3 companies control 71% of national newspaper circulation, and 5 companies control 81% of local newspaper circulation. So, Jeremy Corbyn is a leader that actually gets it. He understands that tech giants have too much power, and that they should be giving back to society by helping to fund independent public journalism. Which leads to the other aspect here, which is that there is too much concentrated power in media. Too few entities control the majority of media. And what that leads to is cookie cutter coverage, but also coverage that often is skewed towards the wealthy and the powerful, whether it's their advertisers or simply because of the bubble that they exist in. So this has led to a media, not even just in the UK, but obviously in the US and other countries as well, that doesn't represent the best interests of actual citizens, and instead represents the interests of those that have the power, of those that have the money, of those that have a real say at the table. So by having a public arm of journalism in the UK, it would lead to better coverage of issues, or at least, at the very least, on the local level, actual local coverage of issues going on in your community. Now, the other aspect here is something that is mentioned in the Guardian piece. So, Corbyn has also proposed forcing large media businesses to give shareholdings to their workers and to allow journalists to elect their editors. So, this is the internal aspect of reshaping the media landscape. So, actually giving power back to the workers that work at these large media companies, including the journalists. They produce the work, they should clearly have a say in the direction of the company. It only makes sense. So I think Corbyn here has proven himself as somebody that understands the importance of media, of how media is controlled and who controls the media. And I think other countries should be looking at Corbyn and what he's proposing here as ideas for something to implement in their own society. Hey, if you enjoyed this video, hit that subscribe button below and consider becoming a patron at therationalnational.com/join. You get some extra content, but also, most importantly, you help support me in continuing to produce these sorts of videos.